My son's wife threw away my medicine, laughing. She didn't expect who walked in next. The morning light finds the dust first. It slips through the blinds in my son's house and lands on the picture frames like a soft confession. A wedding photo. A vacation snapshot from Cancun. A canvas that says, "Family is everything" in curly gold letters. I stare at that one the longest. Family is everything. I used to believe that without question. My name is Ruth. I am 66 years old, a retired school librarian, and lately, someone who counts time in pills. 2 white for blood pressure. 1 tiny pink for the heart. Metformin with breakfast. A baby aspirin because the doctor does not like surprises. I line them up in my plastic pill box the way I used to line up children for recess. Gently, firmly, with a little prayer that everyone gets to where they need to be. When I sold my house last year, the blue one with a rosebush that always bloomed too early, I did it with a smile. Mark said it would help with his down payment. A real step for him and his wife, Emily. "It's your home too, Mom," he promised. "We want you with us." So I came. I came with my casserole dish, my books, my knitting bag, and a heart that still believed a mother's best years are the ones where she watches her children turn into good people. The kitchen here is beautiful. Quartz counters, chrome faucet, a fridge that tells the weather if you tap it twice. Tells me it's 72 degrees and sunny. Does not tell me if I am welcome. Morning, I say, careful with my voice. Morning is a fragile time. You can't throw it like a plate. Emily does not look up from her phone. She wears her robe like a crown and her smirk like jewelry. "Morning," she answers, the word dropping heavy, like a penny in a well you know is dry. I take my pill box from the cupboard above the toaster. Emily put it up there, so it's not cluttering the counter. I nod every time, like gratitude will make my legs longer. I stand on my toes and feel the ache in my knees. The box scrapes forward, then slips into my hands, the way a child's fingers finally curl around a pencil. Count out the morning dose. Familiar. Ordinary. Necessary. "Do you have to do that here?" she asks, soft and sweet, like a sugar packet you open and find salt inside. "Do what?" ask, already knowing. "That," she says, waving her spoon. "The pharmacy show." I smile like librarians do when a student is pretending they didn't return a book that is clearly in their backpack. "Breakfast comes with medicine," I say. "That's the deal." She laughs. "It's not cruel, not yet. Just careless. Everything is a deal with you, isn't it?" Mark walks in and kisses her cheek. He smells like the cologne I bought him on his 28th birthday. He pours coffee, glances at me, then at the pillbox. I wait for him to say nothing, and I am not disappointed. "I made you oatmeal," I say. "Steel cut. You liked it when you were little." He grins, a quick flash of the boy with skinned knees and a library card. "Thanks, Mom. I'm late though. I'll grab something on the way." My smile droops, but only on the inside. The kettle clicks. I take my metformin with chamomile. It goes down easy like a truth you practiced all night. The aspirin sticks to my tongue. I close my eyes and press my fingertip to the spot where my collarbone meets my throat. It's a trick the nurse taught me. Calm the swallow. I imagine the pills traveling the way school buses did on field trip days. Everyone in their seats, windows clean, the driver careful. Emily watches me. She stirs her yogurt as if the swirl could become a whirlpool and pull me in. "How many is it now?" she asks, light, curious, public. 5. 6. I can't keep up. 4 in the morning, I answer. The rest at night. "Must be expensive," she says. "They are cheaper than funerals," I say, and I don't mean it to be sharp, but it is. She hums, sets her spoon down, and wipes an imaginary smear from the counter. "You know, a lot of those pills are scams. The body heals itself if you let it. People rely on crutches." I press the pillbox lid shut. Blick, blick, blick. The sound is small but final. "Walkers help people walk," I say. "Crutches keep bones safe while they heal. Tools are not insults." Mark checks his watch. "I should go," he says. He kisses Emily again, soft, quick. He kisses the air near my head, a polite gesture that lands on the cupboard door. Love you. Text me if you need anything. I want to ask him what I would text. Can you send me respect? Is there a delivery app for that? Be safe, I say instead. He is already halfway out the door. When the house is quiet, the sun moves higher. It touches the family as everything sign like a spotlight does a stage. Emily rinses her bowl and sets it in the sink. By the way, she says as if remembering, the pills on the counter yesterday, are those the heart ones? They were, I say. I moved them to the box. Oh. She opens the trash, drops in a paper towel, and lets the lid thump shut. Good. Counters should be clean. Germs, you know. Of course. I nod. I always nod. I have nods for yes and for peace and for, please don't make this morning harder than it needs to be. She leans against the island, arms folded. Her nails are the color of a stop sign. Mark and I have routines. We like things neat. Predictable. Not a hospital-like. I hear you, I say. I'll keep them in the cupboard. Her smile widens. Perfect. When she leaves the kitchen, I hold the pillbox in my hands a moment longer than necessary. It is warm from my palms. I think of the children who used to hand me books with sticky fingers and say, "This one again, Mrs. Green?" I never minded repeats. Some stories save you every time you read them. I wipe the counter even though it is clean. Then I carry my tea to the small table by the window and watch the neighborhood school bus stop at the corner. 2 children run, backpacks swinging like bells, and a mother waves from a porch with peeling paint. I do not know her, but I wave anyway. She does not see me. A text buzzes on my phone from the pharmacy. Refill ready. I breathe out, not relief exactly but schedule. Rhythm. The clock inside a body that keeps time because you ask it to. I set an alarm for evening pills and another for tomorrow's pickup. From the hallway, I hear Emily laugh into her phone. It is a light, pretty sound when you do not know what it can carry. I fold my hands around the tea and let the heat seep into the thin places between my fingers. I think of the blue house, of roses blooming too early, of a front door that opened with a sigh and not a test. The refrigerator flickers. 72 degrees and sunny. I take a breath and make my voice soft, for the room, for myself. It is good, I say. It is enough. But the truth is heavier than steam, and it does not disappear. There is a cold hum under the beautiful kitchen, a tremor in the polite silences, a shadow in the way my name sounds when Emily says it. I am not a woman who imagines monsters. I am a woman who has learned to shelve them. I lift the pillbox again, press each lid just to be sure. Blick, blick, blick. I did not know my survival would soon become her weapon. The days settled into a rhythm. Not mine, hers. Emily ran the house like a private kingdom. She decided what food went on the table, what shows played on the television, what conversations were too long, and which ones were boring. I adjusted. Mothers always do. But disrespect doesn't arrive in thunderclaps. It creeps in like water seeping under a door, until you realize your shoes are soaked. Started small. At breakfast one morning, as I carefully spooned sugar into my tea, Emily leaned across the counter and said loudly enough for Mark to hear, "Careful, old lady, don't spill. That's expensive marble." Mark chuckled nervously, kissed her on the cheek, and mumbled something about traffic. He didn't look at me. Old lady. The words clung to my chest like burrs. Had a name. Son. Decades of sacrifice that deserved more than 2 syllables of dismissal. But I swallowed it with my tea and let the burn in my throat remind me I was still alive. Another evening I tried to open a jar of pasta sauce. My hands shook. Arthritis makes glass lids feel like locked doors. Emily stood across the kitchen, arms folded, phone glowing in her hand. "Do you need training wheels for that, or what?" I forced a laugh, but my wrist ached. Mark walked in at that exact moment. Relief lit my face, but before I could ask, Emily handed him the jar first. "She's been wrestling with it like it's an Olympic sport," she giggled. He opened it easily, shrugged, and went back to scrolling his phone. No one asked if my hands hurt. One night at dinner, she picked up my pillbox and shook it like a rattle. "What's the magic tonight, heart or sugar?" she asked. Her voice had the shine of sarcasm. The pills clicked against each other. The sound was louder than forks scraping plates. Mark looked at me, then at his wife, then back at his food. He laughed softly, just enough to let her know he was still on her side. I excused myself early and took my pills in the bathroom, staring at the mirror like it might answer me. When did medicine become comedy? The worst came a week later. I had set my evening dose, 4 pills, next to my glass of water on the counter while I folded a dish towel. When I turned back, the counter was bare. It froze, heart racing. "Emily!" She stood by the trash can, lid swinging shut. She held her phone in one hand, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Oops," she said. "Guess I thought those were old vitamins." Her laugh wasn't sharp. It was casual, careless, like tossing lint away. But I heard something inside it. Tiny, deliberate cruelty. I bent down, lifted the trash lid, and saw them crushed under coffee grounds. The pink tablet was smeared brown. I didn't cry. Crying would have made her win. I picked them out, rinsed them under the faucet, and placed them back in the pillbox. My hands trembled as if I were holding broken bones. "You really shouldn't keep those lying around," she said, spoon clinking against her bowl. "They make the kitchen look like a pharmacy." Later that night I told Mark what happened. "Maybe it was just an accident," he said gently, not looking at me. "Emily wouldn't throw away your medicine on purpose. You know how you can be sensitive. Sensitive. A word that means we don't believe you." I wanted to scream. Instead I nodded. Always nodding. Always making myself smaller, quieter, easier to keep. When I lay in bed that night, my chest tight with something heavier than illness, I remembered what my late husband once told me when Mark was just a boy. "Respect," he said, wiping grease from his hands after fixing the car. "Respect is the only inheritance a parent deserves." I closed my eyes, tears sliding into my hairline. I had given my son money, a house, a future. But respect. That was the one thing his wife had stolen, and he hadn't noticed it was missing. That night, I pressed my alarm for the morning pills and whispered to the dark, "I hope I live long enough to see the truth." The dining table was set for 4, though it always felt like 3. Mark sat at the head, his phone face down but glowing with every notification. Emily sat across from me, her smile as sharp as the silverware she polished more than she used. I sat at the end, where the light from the chandelier hit hardest, making the wrinkles on my hands look like cracks in old porcelain. The meal smelled good. Roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, a salad sprinkled with cheese. My stomach growled, but I waited for everyone else to begin, the way manners had been stitched into me since childhood. When I reached for my pillbox, Emily's voice cut through the clatter of forks. "Careful," she said, her tone dripping with amusement. "Don't let any of your magic beans fall into the food." Mark chuckled softly, not lifting his eyes from his plate. My fingers froze on the lid. The pillbox clicked open, the sound louder than I intended, and suddenly Emily leaned across the table, her manicured hand snatching it away from me. "Which one tonight?" she asked, shaking it near her ear. "Heart, sugar, or the one that keeps you from turning to dust?" The rattle echoed, humiliating in its simplicity. I felt my face heat, a wave of shame crawling up my neck. She placed the box just out of my reach, beside the wine glasses, and went back to cutting her chicken as though she hadn't just stripped me of dignity in front of my son. Mark smiled uneasily, glanced at me, and then looked away. "Come on, Em," he said, his voice thin, lacking conviction. "Don't tease." "Tease," she laughed. "I'm just keeping the mood light." I reached out, my hand trembling as I slid the pillbox back to my side. My chest felt tight, not from illness but from the silence of the man I raised. I swallowed the pills with water, my throat aching as if each tablet carried not medicine but shame. The neighbors were there that night too. Friends of Emily's, invited without telling me. They giggled at her jokes, not realizing the cruelty behind them. one of them whispered. She's still taking so many. Poor thing. Poor thing. As though I were already halfway gone, a relic cluttering the house. I forced a smile, kept chewing, kept breathing. Every bite of chicken tasted like chalk. Every swallow carried the bitter flavor of humiliation. My son raised his glass in a toast, oblivious, saying how grateful he was for family dinners. Emily clinked her glass against his, smirking at me over the rim. I lowered my eyes to my plate and pushed the food around, each movement mechanical. Inside I was crumbling. I wasn't just eating food that night. I was swallowing my dignity, piece by piece, while the people I loved most treated it as something disposable. And I told myself as I forced down the last bite, that silence was safer than conflict. But in the quiet corners of my heart, a truth pulsed. Silence was killing me faster than my illness ever could. The morning began with the scent of coffee. I shuffled into the kitchen, slippers brushing the tile, the way I always did. My body moved carefully, cautious of the dizziness that sometimes came if I didn't take my medicine soon enough. I reached for my pillbox on the counter, but my hand closed on air. The counter was bare. I checked the table, a sink, the little basket where I sometimes kept receipts. Nothing. My heartbeat quickened, a heavy thud against my ribs. I bent down and opened the trash. There it was. The entire week's pillbox cracked open, its contents spilled among orange peels, wet coffee grounds, and scraps of last night's dinner. Pink tablets smudged brown, white capsules softening into mush. My lifeline buried like garbage. A laugh drifted from behind me. Like, her-free, cruel, turn. Emily leaned against the doorway, phone in her hand, eyes glinting like glass in the sun. She pressed the screen closer to her mouth, speaking to whoever was on the other end. I told you, she said, her tone dripping with amusement. She doesn't need medicine, she needs discipline. Maybe she'll die faster this way. Her laughter rang out, sharp and clean, cutting through me. My knees weakened. I gripped the counter to stay upright. Emily, I whispered, my voice trembling. Why? She ended the call, tilting her head like a child caught with candy. Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic. Pills, pills, pills. You act like they're keeping you alive. I knelt by the trash, my hands shaking as I picked through the filth, salvaging what I could. Some tablets crumbled between my fingers. Others slipped from my grasp, ruined beyond saving. My chest burned, my breath shallow, but I refused to stop. Emily's footsteps clicked closer. She crouched beside me, her perfume cloying, sweet in a way that made me sick. Look at you, she whispered, digging through garbage for scraps. Is this what dignity looks like? A lump rose in my throat, but I swallowed it down. My voice came out soft, almost steady. These pills are the difference between life and death. Then maybe life should let go, she said, rising, brushing invisible dust from her robe. She left the room humming, as though she'd only tidied a shelf. I sat there on the kitchen floor, pill fragments smeared across my palms, staring at the woman my son had chosen. The air felt thin. The room spun. For a moment I thought my body might give out completely. The front door opened, keys jangling. Mark stepped inside, cheerful, calling her name. He saw me on the floor, hands in the trash, and his face twisted in confusion. Mom, what are you doing down there? Before I could answer, Emily slipped back in, her face painted with innocence. Oh, Mark, she said sweetly. She dropped her medicine. I told her I'd help, but she insisted on doing it herself. His eyes darted between us, suspicion flickering but not settling. He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck and said, Mom, you've got to be more careful. Those pills aren't toys. I opened my mouth, but Emily's hand brushed his arm, her smile soft, believable. She's just shaken. I'll make her tea. Mark nodded, kissed her cheek, and walked toward the living room. I clutched the ruined pillbox to my chest, my voice barely a whisper. One day, truth will walk through that door. Emily glanced back at me, her smile thin and sharp. Not before I lock it. The house was quiet when the first wave hit. A dull pressure pressed against my chest, as though someone had set a stone there while I slept. I pushed myself upright, the room tilting, my breath caught in shallow gasps. My pillbox sat on the counter, empty. Its broken lid snapped shut as if mocking me. I had managed to salvage only 2 tablets the night before, rinsed and swallowed with the taste of coffee grounds still clinging. They were not enough. I tried to steady myself, gripping the back of a chair. My knees trembled. The floor seemed to slide sideways under my feet. I reached for the kettle, thinking tea might calm the pounding in my chest, but the handle slipped from my fingers. The metal clattered against the counter, the sound sharp, startling even me. From upstairs came Emily's voice. "Are you all right down there?" she called, but there was no concern in it, only mockery, stretched out like a cat playing with prey. "I just need my medicine," I whispered, but my voice cracked and carried nowhere. The second wave was sharper. Pain cut through my chest, hot and sudden, and I stumbled forward. My hands slapped against the tile as my legs gave way beneath me. The cold floor met my cheek. I gasped, each breath thinner than the last. Emily appeared in the doorway, her robe pulled tight, her phone in hand. She didn't rush to me. She leaned against the frame, tilting her head as though she were considering a piece of art. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a smirk. "Dramatic," she said softly. "Always so dramatic." I tried to lift my hand toward her, but it felt heavy, useless. The edges of my vision darkened. I thought of Mark, of the boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and stories from school, the boy who believed I could fix anything with a bandage and a kiss. I wanted to call his name, but only a rasp came out. Emily sighed, scrolling through her phone as if weighing whether to film or to help. The front door opened, footsteps quick and sharp. Mark's voice filled the silence, bright with energy. "I'm home." Emily straightened, slipped her phone into her pocket, and suddenly her face transformed. Concern painted her features, urgency rushed into her movements. She dropped to her knees beside me, her hands fluttering near my arm. "Mark, something's wrong with your mother." He appeared seconds later, his expression shifting from confusion to panic. "Mom." He knelt beside me, lifting my head gently, fear flooding his voice. "Mom, stay with me." "What happened?" "She just collapsed," Emily said, her voice trembling now, rehearsed but convincing. "I don't know why, she was fine and then—" "Call an ambulance," Mark shouted, his voice breaking. Emily obeyed, pressing numbers with fingers that only minutes ago had scrolled lazily over gossip. I tried to speak, to tell him the truth, but the words tangled in my throat. My son's eyes locked on mine, wide and desperate, and I saw the boy he once was, begging me not to leave. By the time the paramedics arrived, I was barely conscious. The straps of the stretcher held me steady as they wheeled me out. Emily clutched Mark's arm, whispering frantic reassurances, playing the part of the terrified wife. The doctor's voice reached me later in the hospital, crisp and clear above the beeping machines. "If she misses her medication again," he warned, "she may not survive next time." I closed my eyes, the words etching themselves deep inside me. They weren't just a medical warning. They were a promise. Proof would come. The days after the hospital blurred together, but I kept hearing the doctor's voice in my head. If she misses her medication again, she may not survive next time. His warning became a drumbeat in my chest, steady and unrelenting. I returned home to the same walls, the same polished counters, and the same woman who had smiled at me while I lay on the floor. Emily fussed over me at first, almost too sweet, her words dripping with concern that didn't reach her eyes. "You really gave us a scare," she said as she tucked a blanket around me on the couch. "We can't have you overdoing it." Mark believed her act completely. He hovered nearby, guilt etched on his face, but every time he looked at me, I swallowed the truth and nodded. Had no proof, only suspicion. But suspicion can be sharper than evidence. It gnaws at you, whispering in your ear that something isn't right. And it doesn't let you sleep. One afternoon when Emily left for the salon, I searched her side of the kitchen drawers. She had a habit of leaving things behind: receipts, old grocery lists, sticky notes with reminders. That's when I found the small black notebook tucked beneath a stack of recipe cards. Inside were scribbles that chilled me. Pills thrown out twice. Coffee grounds hide better. Next to one line, a small smiley face. I closed the book quickly, my hands trembling. I needed more. Something undeniable. Mark had once shown me how to use the security camera app on his phone to check the front door. Struck me then, if cameras could watch the outside, why not the inside? With shaky fingers, I ordered a small one online. A discreet square, no bigger than a button, easy to hide among the spice jars. When it arrived, I placed it on the shelf facing the counter where I kept my pillbox. My heart thudded as I pressed the record button. 2 days later, while I pretended to nap in the living room, I heard her footsteps in the kitchen. The sound of the pillbox lid clicking open reached me, followed by a laugh so soft it made my skin crawl. She spoke into her phone, her voice clear and cruel. "Watch this," she said. "She'll never even notice." Another week gone. I forced myself to stay still while the camera captured everything. Her hand tipping the pills into the trash, her grin as she took a photo of the empty box, the mocking way she whispered, "Tick-tock, old woman." That night when Mark came home, I said nothing. I ate my dinner quietly, letting Emily chatter about her day. But later, alone in my room, I replayed the footage. The image was grainy, but her face was unmistakable, her voice sharp and undeniable. I saved it to a hidden folder on my phone, my fingers steady now, certain. I whispered into the darkness as I pressed the screen to my chest. Sometimes patience is the sharpest knife. I let the days pass as if nothing had changed. I still set my pillbox on the counter each morning, still moved slowly through the kitchen, still smiled when Mark kissed my cheek on his way out. Emily mistook my silence for weakness, for surrender. She grew bolder, careless, her cruelty ripening into something she no longer bothered to hide. One evening, I sat at the table folding napkins when she entered with her glass of wine. She swirled it slowly, eyes glinting, and walked straight to the pillbox. She opened it, lifted the compartments one by one, and tilted them over the trash. Tablets fell like rain against the plastic liner, soft little thuds drowned by her laughter. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" she asked, not bothering to lower her voice. "A shadow. Burden. A problem that can be solved by gravity and time." I stayed still, my hands pressed flat against the napkin, my heart pounding so loud I thought she might hear it. She bent close to me, her breath warm with wine. "You won't last, and when you're gone, this house will finally be ours. Maybe I'll even plant roses out front. Not for you, never for you, but because I'll enjoy watching them bloom after you're buried." I raised my eyes to her then, meeting her stare without blinking. My voice came out soft, almost gentle. "Be careful, Emily. Truth has a way of walking through doors you think are locked." Her smirk widened. "The only door that matters is the one I close behind you when you're gone." She dropped the pillbox onto the counter with a clatter, turned away, and lifted her phone. The front door creaked open just then. Heavy footsteps, familiar and sure, filled the hall. Mark's voice called out, cheerful and tired from work. He stepped into the kitchen, pulling off his jacket, and froze. Emily was still laughing, pill fragments scattered across the trash lid. The pillbox lay open, compartments empty, and her words still lingered in the air like smoke. Silence fell, thick and cutting. Mark's eyes darted from her to me, confusion twisting into something darker as he pieced it together. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I only looked at my son and whispered, steady and clear, "I told you. Truth would walk through that door." Mark's face drained of color as the words hung between us. He stared at the pillbox, the trash can, and finally at Emily, who stood frozen with her glass of wine halfway to her lips. For once, she had no smirk to hide behind. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low but shaking. Emily laughed too quickly, too loudly. "It's nothing. She's making it look worse than it is." You know how dramatic she gets. Worse than it is. His voice cracked as he stepped closer, eyes fixed on the empty compartments of the pillbox. These are her medications, Emily. She could die without them. She doesn't need half of these. Emily snapped, her mask slipping. Doctors hand out pills like candy. She uses them as an excuse to control everything, to make us feel guilty. She's manipulating you, Mark. She always has. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my hand steady for the first time in weeks. With one swipe, the screen lit up, and Emily's face filled it. Laughing, mocking, tossing my pills into the trash. Her voice came through clearly. "Tick-tock, old woman." Mark froze, the sound echoing through the kitchen. His jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "Play it again," he said. I did. Every word, every laugh, every cruel whisper spilled into the silence. Emily's face went pale, then flushed red. She reached for the phone, but Mark blocked her with one sharp movement. "You tried to kill her," he said, his voice trembling with fury. "My mother. You tried to kill my mother." Emily's eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape. I didn't mean it like that. I was angry. I just wanted her to stop controlling everything. I thought." "You thought what?" Mark's voice rose, shattering the quiet. "That she'd just die. That I wouldn't notice. That I'd live in this house with you happy, while my mother was gone." Tears filled her eyes, but they were thin, calculated, the kind she had used to soften arguments before. She reached for his hand, but he pulled back as though her touch burned. "Mark," she whispered, her voice breaking now, desperate. "I did it for us. Don't you see? She's been holding us back. Always here, always needing. I just wanted." "Stop." His voice cut like a blade. "You don't get to justify this. You don't get to stand in this house and tell me my mother's life was in the way of your comfort." I pressed my palm against the table to steady myself. My son's eyes finally met mine, and for the first time in years, I saw the boy who once ran to me when he was afraid, who once believed I could fix anything. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I let you suffer in silence. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe." I reached out and touched his arm, my voice soft. "You see it now." The neighbors must have heard the shouting, because faces appeared at the window, whispers drifting like smoke. Emily's mask shattered completely then, fury flashing across her features as she realized there was no way out, no more lies to spin. "You'll regret this," she spat, her voice sharp and trembling. "Both of you." Mark didn't flinch. He pointed to the door, his words cold and final. "Get out." Emily's protest caught in her throat as Mark's words echoed through the house. She looked at him as if waiting for him to take it back, to soften, to save her. But he didn't. His jaw was set, his eyes hard. He pointed again, silent this time, and the weight of it was heavier than any shouting could have been. She slammed her glass on the counter, red wine spilling across the marble like blood, and stormed down the hall. The sound of drawers opening and closing rattled through the house as she threw clothes into a bag. Mark stood rigid, his fists clenched at his sides, breathing like he'd been running. I sat at the table, pillbox in front of me, fragments of tablets scattered like broken teeth. The front door opened and slammed shut, her footsteps fading into the night. The silence she left behind was louder than her laughter had ever been. Mark sank into the chair across from me, his hands covering his face. For a long time neither of us spoke. The ticking clock on the wall counted every second like a witness. Finally, his voice cracked the quiet. "I failed you." I shook my head. "You were blind, not cruel. There's a difference. But I let her hurt you. I let her humiliate you. I laughed when she mocked you. I chose her silence over your voice." His words tumbled out, heavy with guilt. "You should hate me." I reached across the table, my fingers brushing his knuckles until he lowered his hands. His eyes were red, his face pale. "I don't hate you," I whispered. "I only wanted you to see me again. Not as a burden. As your mother. Tears slipped down his cheeks. He slid from his chair to his knees, clutching my hands like a child begging forgiveness. I see you now. I swear I will never let anyone treat you like that again. The doorbell rang then, sharp and unexpected. Mark wiped his face and answered it. Two neighbors stood outside, their expressions uneasy. They had heard enough, seen enough through the window. Word spread quickly in this neighborhood. By morning everyone would know. Emily's cruelty would not remain hidden behind closed doors. Mark closed the door quietly and turned back to me. I'll file for divorce, he said. His voice steady now, resolute. She doesn't belong in this house. She doesn't belong in our lives. I nodded, my chest tight but lighter than it had been in years. Justice wasn't always handed down in courts. Sometimes it happened in kitchens, in whispers, in the way a son finally looked his mother in the eye and chose her. Mark cleared the table gently, rinsing the pill fragments from the counter. He set the pillbox back in front of me, empty but waiting, as though it too was ready to begin again. That night, for the first time since I moved into their house, I slept without fear of waking to find my survival tossed into the trash. The silence was no longer cruel. It was peace. The morning light returned, softer this time, warmer. I sat in the garden with a blanket over my knees, the pillbox resting on the small table beside my tea. Each compartment was filled again, not with fear but with care. Mark had driven to the pharmacy himself and handed them to me one by one, as if giving back pieces of my life. I watched the sunlight spill over the roses, their petals open and fearless, and I thought of the words my husband once said. Respect is the only inheritance a parent deserves. Emily's absence was a silence that healed instead of wounded. No laughter cutting through me, no mocking eyes watching my every move. The neighbors greeted me differently now. When I stepped outside, their smiles carried pity, yes, but also something else. Recognition. They had heard, they had seen, and they knew the truth. Shame belonged to her now, not me. Mark joined me on the bench. His shoulders heavy but his expression softer than it had been in years. I should have protected you, he said quietly. You did, I answered. Not soon enough, but you did. And that's what I will remember. He turned his face toward me, eyes wet, and I reached for his hand. It was larger than I remembered, stronger, but still the same hand that once clung to mine when thunder rattled the windows. Now he held on again, but not from fear. This time from love. I looked down at the pillbox and smiled faintly. Medicine keeps the body alive. But it is respect that keeps the soul alive. Without it, even the strongest heart begins to fail. The breeze carried the sound of children playing on the street. Their laughter rose, innocent and light, the kind that heals instead of wounds. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the sun settle across my face. For the first time in a long time, peace did not feel like a visitor. Felt like home. Family should be where love begins, not where it ends. And as I breathed in the morning air, I knew that even in broken houses, truth can still open the right door.